What would you do if you came face to face with a dinosaur? And I'm not talking one of the cute ones from the cartoons, or even the cool ones you see in an action flick. I'm talking a real, living, breathing dinosaur. One that wanted to hunt you down and consume you. Well, one thing I'll tell you is that you'd likely not survive the experience. Hello Internet! Welcome to Film Theory, the show that actually legitimately wants to know what your favorite dinosaur is. Like, for real, I love this question. Please leave it in a comment. Mine's the Velociraptor, even if in real life it was more of a danger chicken than a reptile apex predator, but even still, I'm not sure which one would be scarier, which actually brings us to today's subject. See, a new analog horror series has been popping up on YouTube and in the recommendation feeds of all of us here at Theorist, showing dinosaurs in the most terrifying place I can imagine. Your house. Yeah, this is Prehistoric Emergence by the indie creator Azen Studios, all about a world where mysterious sinkholes have started popping up all over the world. But instead of just falling into darkness, things come out of these pits, ancient animals thought to have been long extinct, and they're devastating the world. Of course, as any classic analog horror would, we see this story unfold through a series of emergency broadcast alerts, newscasts, and found footage. And man, these terrifying dino-themed thumbnails have been popping up all over my feed, and this really seems to have just caught fire in the analog horror world, so, well, I knew we had to cover it here. Though, I will say this up front, the creator of Prehistoric Emergence used a few generative AI tools to create some of the content in this series, particularly in the first few episodes. They're pretty open about it in the description of these videos, and gonna be real, I don't love that. As always, we here at Theorist support human art and human artists. That being said, however, in more recent videos, they have moved away from this generative AI entirely and focused on working with real human animators to create new content for this project, which is exactly the path we want to see here, right? If someone is going to use generative AI tools and then their series pops off, we want them to use those resources to then support human art. However, just like we talked about last year, I want to make sure that you are given the opportunity to skip this one if you don't feel comfortable with that use of generative AI. But if you can get past that, the ideas at the core of Prehistoric Emergence are really cool. It's like taking Jurassic Park and turning it into a true horror film, giving us a glimpse at what would really happen in a world that became overrun by dinosaurs and other ancient beasts. But of course, hidden just underneath the surface of this spooky, scary series is a mystery. Who is bringing these creatures back, and why are they doing it? And how exactly is humanity gonna mess this one up? Because, I mean, you know we will. This one gets wild, loyal theorists, so pull the covers over your head and hide from the monsters as we take a bite out of Prehistoric Emergence. Episode 1 of the series is simply titled Prehistoric Emergence, and as soon as you click into the video, we're greeted by a familiar noise. That, my friends, is the siren of the United States Emergency Alert System, normally used to warn of imminent danger. Sometimes it's used for severe weather emergencies like tornadoes, hurricanes, and flash floods. Other times it's used to announce potential threats to public safety like active shooters. But here in Prehistoric Emergence, well, it's being used for nothing we've ever seen before. The government is warning the public of the return of prehistoric creatures. Strangely, giant sinkholes have opened up in the ocean, and 3 species previously considered to be extinct are coming out of them. We actually literally see some of these animals come out of these holes in later videos in the series. Fun fact, but we actually have a real-world scientific term for this: Lazarus taxon. Lazarus as in the man that Jesus raised from the dead in Christian tradition, and taxon, which is a biology term essentially meaning any scientifically classified group or entity. And believe it or not, but we actually have ancient extinct species that have returned in the real world too. The most iconic of these is the coelacanth, a species of fish thought to have gone extinct around 66 million years ago. However, in 1938, biologists found a living one off the coast of South Africa. That is wild and adds a bit of tension to this series since, I mean, theoretically, it could be possible. Though, let's be real, if dinosaurs like this showed up, I'd be hopping on my phone to let everyone know I saw one, right? Though it can be tough to get basically guaranteed great service without the partner for today's theory, Mint Mobile. At this point, you probably know about Mint Mobile. They're a wireless network that really don't want you overpaying for features that you don't want or need on your phone. And you can get their premium service starting at just $15 a month. Mint have the largest 5G network in the country, covering 98% of Americans, but that bumps up to 99% when you factor in their 4G LTE network too. At this point, even if you go back to prehistoric times, Mint's likely got you covered, you know, as you run away from those velociraptors. They don't want you to overpay for some crappy one-size-fits-all deal. Instead, you get to choose the amount of data that feels right for you that'll work with what you need. Are you a loner dinosaur that just wants to be left alone? Well, then maybe Mint's 5GB plan is exactly what you need. But if you have like 1,500 dino siblings, you're gonna want that unlimited data plan. Switching is also super easy. Instead of trying to find some wormhole through time, instead you can keep your own phone or get a new one from Mint. Keep your number and your contacts, and sign up and activate service with an eSIM, all from the comfort of your own home. 96% of users are highly satisfied with Mint's customer care, and on the off chance you're just not feeling it, hey, all their plans come with a 7-day unconditional money-back guarantee. Right now, Mint is offering new customers their best offer of the year. All unlimited plans are 50% off, so go click the link in the description or scan the QR code on screen to get 3, 6, or 12 months unlimited for just $15 a month. Thanks again to Mint Mobile for sponsoring today's theory, and let's get back into the dark mysteries of prehistoric emergence. Anyway, the first of these creatures we're warned of in Prehistoric Emergence is the Mosasaurus, which you likely recognize from the Jurassic World movies. These things can get up to 60 feet long, and fun fact, but they're not actually classified as fish or dinosaurs. They're basically big lizards. Anyway, these things have been rediscovered in the Atlantic Ocean, mostly in tropical and polar regions, where they have a habit of capsizing boats and eating the people on board. Secondly, we have the Dunkleosteus, which originally lived 360 million years ago during the Devonian period. Also known as the Age of the Fish, I did not know that was a thing. Though the dunk here might seem a bit goofy when you look at it, don't let its tuna-shaped body fool you. Its mouth is twice the size of a great white shark's, and it can attack swiftly and without warning. The PSA also warns that they have armored skin, protecting it from regular ammunition. Only harpoons or heavy-duty bullets are gonna do anything against these guys, and you know they're dangerous when this is the official advice they give.
It is recommended that you employ avoidance.
Yeah, if you see one of them, just don't. And the last creature in this video is one that probably needs a little introduction: the megalodon shark. These bad boys lived up to around 3.6 million years ago and were monstrously big, 3 times the size of a modern great white. And not only is the megalodon the most dangerous of these 3 to humans, but also other ocean life as well. Apparently there's been a giant drop in ocean wildlife, with whale populations down 62%, seals down 75%, turtles down 54%, and fish, yeah, just fish, down a whopping 87%. That would be terrible news. Obviously, these 3 new ocean residents are doing a ton of harm, and humans are being encouraged to stay out of the water for their own safety. But even still, introducing these species could wipe out this entire ecosystem, or at the very least, change it forever. And we have proof that that would happen in the real world. Invasive species are non-native plants, animals, and organisms that thrive in areas that they don't naturally live in, and can go on to cause economic or environmental harm. To be clear, some of this is natural. I mean, animals move around, wander into new places, and sometimes find new homes at the expense of others. But humans have made this way worse. Because we move around a lot and like to bring our stuff with us, we can carry dangerous diseases, bugs, rodents, whatever. And while some of these non-native species can be beneficial, like tomatoes and potatoes for example, are from the Americas and are now staples in European meals, others are not. One example would be the spotted lanternfly, indigenous to China and Vietnam. Somehow it made its way to South Korea, Japan, and even as far as the United States, and has been terrorizing the Northeast for a few years now. So much so that legit departments of agriculture in some states tell you to squash them on sight. Another example is kudzu, a vine from East Asia introduced to the US at the 1876 World Fair. And though officials hoped that it would help stop erosion, by the 1970s it basically covered the South and was recognized as a weed. And it is so dense that it blocks other plants from getting light and can grow on and damage infrastructure. Now, imagine instead of annoying bugs and plants getting introduced to your hometown, it was a megalodon shark eating all of the little critters, and also dogs, and humans. That is what's happening in the oceans here in Prehistoric Emergence, and, well,
for now, The ocean is no longer in our control.
Jeez, that was just one episode of this, but it did a lot of setup for us to help understand this world, and the others shouldn't take us nearly as long, hopefully. In episode 2, we learn that these holes are no longer just in the oceans. Several have opened up on land and allowed even more prehistoric monsters to crawl back out. Firstly, we have the Megalania, the largest ever land-dwelling lizard spotted in Australia. Well, sometimes, because these things can blend into their surroundings and sneak up on prey. We later learn that they've devastated the kangaroo population, threatening the entire Australian ecosystem. Meanwhile, Colombia and India are both in a state of emergency because of the reappearance of the Titanoboa and the Vasuki indictus, massive snake species that lived approximately 60 million years ago. These things were huge. Like, here's a size comparison between the vertebrae of a modern-day anaconda and the Titanoboa. Yeah, I don't think I need to say which one is which. And worst of all, both countries have basically been shut down and cut off from the rest of the world to try to stop the spread of these beasts. But unlike the first episode, not all of the new creatures here are bad. Woolly mammoths are back and already been put into zoos and in the sights of poachers. And thankfully, an ancient whale from about 12 million years ago called the Leviathan melvelli has also returned. And they're big and powerful enough to kill megalodons. The two often come into contact in what seems like a natural version of biological control, or the deliberate use of natural enemies to suppress populations of a target species. This is interesting because this is the first real example of two ancient species coming back that aren't necessarily friendly to each other, and they don't seem to be working towards the same goal. That's interesting to say the least. So, despite the mixed bag of creatures now coming out of these holes, humanity has decided that they need to fight back, creating GPAC, or the Global Prehistoric Affairs Commission, and, well, several individual governments are taking drastic action.
In the meantime, many governments are resorting to bombing the openings to prevent more animals from reappearing.
How very American of all of us. But, well, it might be necessary because the end of episode 2 gives us a terrifying view of what's to come. You see, strange noises have been heard coming from one of the holes near Billings, Montana. I do not like that. Now, if you're anything like the dino nerd that I am, you'll have recognized that noise. It's the same one that a recent study found that a famous dinosaur would have actually sounded like, and the news is not good for Billings. Now, up until this point, Prehistoric Emergence has followed a sort of pretty standard story structure. Basically, every video introduces a few new animals and then the ways that they're impacting the environment. But the third video is a little bit different. Here, we get legit lore drops, news broadcasts, and, well, more traditional analog horror storytelling. Trust me, you'll see what I mean. Towards the beginning, we get a bunch of news updates. More and more holes have opened up, and nations have stopped their bombing campaigns because they simply appear faster than they can be destroyed. Bounties have been placed on some of the creatures. Residents close to the holes are being relocated, and, strangely, we learn that the blue holes in the oceans have been linked to rising sea levels. That's not something you would expect to happen with holes in the ocean, right? Like, you'd expect that water to flow down into the earth. Clearly, these holes are leading somewhere. We also discover what that terrible noise from the end of the previous video was. 19 Tyrannosaurus rexes appeared in Billings, Montana and rampaged through the town. They killed 313 people and injured many, many more, making that the deadliest mass casualty event in Montanan history. Before this, it would have been the Speculator mine disaster of 1917, which left 168 dead from a fire that started underground. Of course, if you've watched any sort of dinosaur-related media, you'd know that the T-Rex is basically king of the dangerous dinosaurs, so that body count isn't too surprising. Of course, we also get some other updates of nasty monsters now back out in the world. There's the Quetzalcoatlus, the largest flying creature ever known to exist, terrorizing people and eating their prey whole. That has unfortunately included dogs and even children. An ancient marsupial predator called the Thylacoleo has been sighted in Australia, while Brachiosaurus have been seen in the Rocky Mountains. And though they are relatively harmless, unfortunately they are eating all of the trees in the forests here too quickly, threatening this part of the climate even more. But that's not everything in this video. See, unlike the previous ones, several glitches interrupt this broadcast. The text changes momentarily when talking about the Thylacoleo to read, Lions of Judgment. The screen turns red as the T-Rex is introduced, and at one point, we see a couple frames where the news broadcast reads, Is this the wrath of Quetzalcoatl while punishing us backwards. Similar name to the dinosaur, right? But that's not where it's left, because strangest of all, towards the end of the broadcast, the entire thing is interrupted by a picture of a strange statue. If you don't know, this is a statue of the Aztec god Quetzalcoatl. Again, there's that name. This is interesting because when you look into the lore behind Quetzalcoatl, you'll find that he was a central figure to the Aztec religion. Now, this is a simplification of an entire culture's beliefs, but more or less, he was a great feathered serpent, the creator god of mankind who also gifted us with corn and maize, which became central to the diet of the Aztecs. That right there is just fascinating, right? Because through the lens of modern science, a lot of those extinct dinosaurs would look like feathered serpents. Many of the dinosaurs weren't the scaly creatures Jurassic Park would have you believe, but instead closer to birds than you might be picturing. Additionally, Quetzalcoatl is heavily connected with both the ideas of death and resurrection. And, well, what are we seeing in this story? The resurrection of these extinct species back into the modern world. This is clearly a huge part of the message of this story just waiting to be uncovered. Episode 4 shows us how, despite the dangers here, a new status quo has started to emerge in this world. Several more creatures have returned, including the Anomalocaris and the Camarasaurus. The Anomalocaris lived 520 million years ago and is basically like a big, long shrimp, while the Camarasaurus is from about 470 million years ago and are giant squids with cone-shaped shells. According to Asian News, neither are invasive, but instead are acting as natural predators for other returned species that have been causing damage. For example, the Anomalocaris is eating shipworms, which are little mollusks who love to eat wood and destroys much of human infrastructure. However, humans being humans, well, we see a new animal and wonder, man, what does that taste like? A whole market has popped up around eating these prehistoric creatures, even the ones that help us, which could be a big problem down the road. See, humanity isn't exactly known for our moderation. Globally, 35% of our fish stocks are fished at unsustainable levels, and I can only imagine that we're doing the exact same thing here with these prehistoric creatures. That's not good. But also, something else that jumped out at me in these last two videos that were more lore heavy, well, one of the mammoths being held at the Toronto Zoo died of tuberculosis. Yeah, a very human disease, but also a modern one, which, well, that could be a disaster for these prehistoric creatures. Now, obviously, dinosaurs have never miraculously returned, so we don't really have any data to go off there, but, well, there are precedents in human history that we can look at. When the Europeans arrived in the Americas, they brought many European diseases like smallpox, measles, and the flu with them. And, tragically, the indigenous peoples of the Americas did not have any immunity to these diseases. This led to the loss of up to 95% of native peoples, and some communities were driven to total extinction. If mammoths and other creatures like this are vulnerable to modern diseases, there's a world where they just don't make it too far in this day and age. But, well, the thing I would actually be worried about here is if it goes the other way around. See, if these sinkholes are bringing back these ancient creatures, both big and small, everything from werns to brachiosauruses, well, let's just say they're gonna stop there. Could something even smaller come through? Something like, say, a disease? If an ancient disease were to come back and modern humanity had just zero tolerance to it, that could mean lights out for the entire human race, and that's a very real fear. Some scientists are concerned that climate change and the thawing of the northern hemisphere would reawaken dormant strains of the bubonic plague. You know, the Black Death? And that would be terrible. Okay, so just in general, this world is, well, it's messed up. Not only are these predators returning and completely upending everything we know about the food chain and destroying the climate as we know it, but humans can't help themselves and basically harvest these returning animals, whether they're killing us or helping us or threatening to destroy the world. Very on brand, very cash money of humanity. But even still, through all of this, well, there seems to be some strange, intelligent design to everything that's happening here, to the creatures that are coming back and why. And it's more than likely connected to some strange divine being like Quetzalcoatl. And all of that seems to be some running message in this series. See, we humans have become comfortable with our place at the top of Earth's food chain. We are the dominant species on this planet, but, well, we weren't always so. There were monsters like this that could easily destroy what we've built. And maybe the most messed up thing? Well, humans are doing that themselves. In this very series, it talks about how climate change is being sped up, how humanity is overfishing, overdoing it on their resources. And I mean, isn't it a nice full circle moment to think about how the thing that kickstarted that climate change was fuel created from the long crushed bodies of these dinosaurs? Humanity is the apex predator and destroying itself and the world it lives on. And honestly, the holes that these dinosaurs are coming out of actually represent that pretty well, right? Though some of these holes resemble giant caves, others look a lot like sinkholes or underground formations typically caused by frequent exposure to water. And isn't it interesting that these holes in this series are theorized to be causing the rise in the sea level then? Depending on their size, these sorts of sinkholes can range from inconvenient to massively dangerous. And considering how big these holes in the series are, yeah, they're falling into the massively dangerous category. In episode 4, we learn that there are at least 1,066 of these, and later on we see that there are more than 12,600 of these reported openings. And those are just the ones that GPAC knows of. Right off the bat, these things would have the potential to cause massive damage to human civilization. Entire buildings or properties would be swallowed up if they opened up in the right place. And if they hit a location with roads, a sewage system, water ducts, or an electric grid, well, that could cripple essential parts of what we need for human society to function. And here's the kicker. A lot of sinkholes in the real world are caused by climate change. That's not me saying that, it's science and this series. But see, while all of the damage to the world might hurt human civilization, it won't hurt the Earth so much. We humans aren't essential. If we disappeared, were wiped off the face of the planet, eventually, Earth would move on without us. I mean, the death of the dinosaurs is proof of that enough. They were the top dog and were killed and, well, nobody cares anymore. Prehistoric Emergence is just showing us what could happen in an alternate path here. There was just so much to Prehistoric Emergence, guys, that we couldn't actually fit it all into one video. I'm on page 7 of this script now, and we've only covered season 1 of the series. So please, let me know if you want us to cover season 2 and where this mystery is going, because I can't wait to find out. But until then, remember that it's all just a theory. A film theory. And cut. Up next on Film Theory. The world of Iron Lung would be hell on Earth.